The year is 1978. The stage lights are a blinding, star-studded panorama, and the air is thick with the sweet perfume of teenage devotion. On a television screen, a young man with a cascading mane of blonde hair, a dazzling smile, and a voice like spun gold sings a song about a love that is shadow dancing. He moves with an effortless, boyish charm that makes every girl in the audience believe he's singing just to her. This is Andy Gibb, the youngest brother of the legendary Bee Gees, and he is a global phenomenon. He's a pop sensation, a teen idol, and the face of a new generation of disco glamour. His first three singles, I Just Wanna Be Your Everything, Love is Thicker Than Water, and Shadow Dancing, all soared to #1 in the United States, an unprecedented feat that placed him in a league of his own. But while the world was dancing to his infectious melodies, the man behind the music was locked in a devastating struggle. The fairy tale was just a facade, a flimsy curtain hiding a life ravaged by self-doubt, crippling insecurity, and a relentless search for an identity beyond the long, shadow-casting legacy of his brothers. Born in Manchester, England in 1958, Andrew Roy Gibb was the baby of the family, a fact that would shape his entire life. His older brothers, Barry, Robin, and Maurice, were already on their way to becoming superstars, a musical brotherhood that would eventually define an entire era. Andy's childhood was a mix of privilege and profound loneliness. He was doted on, but he was also left behind, a child watching his brother's meteoric rise from the sidelines. His family's move to Australia when he was 6 years old only intensified this feeling of being an outsider. While his brothers were touring the world, Andy was a kid in a new country, navigating a life that felt constantly in flux. He was a very sweet kid, his mother, Barbara Gibb, would later say. But you could see even then, he just desperately wanted to be like his brothers. This desire to emulate, to belong, was the fire that fueled his own musical ambitions. He picked up a guitar at a young age, a natural mimic who could effortlessly replicate the soaring falsetto and soulful melodies that were his family's trademark. But this was also the beginning of his greatest struggle, finding a voice that was truly his own. Andy's journey to stardom was both aided and hindered by his famous last name. His brothers were his biggest cheerleaders, but their help also meant he was never truly seen as his own artist. His first solo single, Words and Music, was a hit in Australia, but it was when he moved to the United States and began working with his brother Barry that his career exploded. Barry, a master songwriter, penned Andy's first 3 chart toppers, providing him with a sound that was both familiar and fresh. The hits came fast and furious, and Andy Gibb was thrust into the global spotlight. He was a sensation, a new kind of pop star who embodied the smooth, romantic innocence of the late 70s, but the pressure was immense. He wasn't just following in the footsteps of the Bee Gees. He was expected to be their equal, a challenge that would have been impossible for anyone. He was always trying to be as good as his brothers, Maurice Gibb once reflected, and it just ate him alive. This constant comparison, this lifelong struggle to prove his worth, was a relentless force that chipped away at his fragile self-esteem. His romantic life was a public spectacle, a series of high-profile relationships that made him a constant subject of tabloid scrutiny. He was married briefly in his early 20s to Kim Reeder, a relationship that produced his only daughter, Peta, but the marriage quickly dissolved under the pressure of his newfound fame. His most famous relationship, however, was with the actress Victoria Principal, a glamorous, high-profile love affair that captivated the nation. She was the star of the hit show Dallas, and together, they were a golden couple, the epitome of 80s celebrity. The media loved them, and they were a fixture on the covers of magazines around the world. But behind the glossy photos, the relationship was a volatile, passionate roller coaster. Victoria was reportedly frustrated by Andy's escalating drug use and his constant self-destructive behavior. He was an angel when he was good, she said in an interview after their split. But when he was bad, he was a demon. Their love story, which had once seemed like a fairy tale, ended in a bitter public breakup that left Andy heartbroken and even more vulnerable. At the height of his career, Andy Gibb was everywhere. He was a regular on shows like The Merv Griffin Show and The Mike Douglas Show, a television personality who charmed hosts and audiences alike. He even co-hosted the music show Solid Gold, a gig that solidified his status as a mainstream star. But this public persona, the smiling, charismatic boy next door, was a stark contrast to his private reality. He was a man consumed by his inner demons, a soul ravaged by a deep-seated insecurity and a crippling addiction to cocaine. The drug, which had started as a party indulgence, quickly spiraled out of control. It was a vicious cycle. The pressure to perform led him to seek escape in drugs, and the drugs, in turn, destroyed his ability to perform. The Bee Gees, who had been his biggest champions, were now forced to watch in helpless horror as their baby brother's life unraveled. "We tried to help him," Barry Gibb later said, his voice heavy with sadness. "We tried everything. But you can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped." The superstar who had once been on top of the world was now losing everything: his career, his relationships, and, most tragically, himself. The decline was swift and brutal. By the early 1980s, his music career had stalled. He was dropped from his record label, and his attempts at a comeback were thwarted by his erratic behavior and unreliability. He was a star who had burned too brightly, too fast. His final years were a painful, lonely existence, a desperate search for sobriety and a second chance. He entered rehab multiple times, but the addiction was a beast he couldn't conquer. His family rallied around him, offering support and a chance to get his life back on track. In the mid-80s, he seemed to be making progress. He was working on new music, and there were whispers of a comeback tour. He was living in London, a place where he could escape the ghosts of his past and find a new beginning. He was even planning to reunite with his brothers for a new project. For a brief moment, it seemed like the fairy tale might have a happy ending after all, but the fairy tale was not to be. In March 1988, after a celebratory trip to London for his 30th birthday, he was hospitalized with a crippling stomach pain. The doctors diagnosed him with myocarditis, a viral infection that causes the heart muscle to become inflamed. His years of drug abuse had weakened his heart, leaving it vulnerable. On March 10, 1988, just 5 days after his birthday, Andy Gibb died in an Oxfordshire hospital. He was 30 years old. The news sent a shockwave of grief through the music world and beyond. The baby of the Gibb family, the boy with the golden voice, was gone. His brothers, who had tried so desperately to save him, were left to mourn a life that was a symphony of unfulfilled potential. A beautiful song that ended on a final, heartbreaking note. The family's statement was a testament to their love and their pain, a raw, emotional farewell to a son and brother who had left them far too soon. The legacy of Andy Gibb is a complicated and bittersweet one. For his fans, he remains the charming teen idol, the voice of a simpler time, a memory of disco's golden age. For his family, he is a tragic figure, a brother and a son who was swallowed whole by the very fame he so desperately craved. The mystery of his death, the what-ifs, and the could-have-beens have fueled countless documentaries and books, a public fascination with a life that was both brilliant and heartbreakingly short. But his most enduring legacy is the music itself. His songs, filled with a youthful innocence and a deep, romantic yearning, still resonate with audiences today. They are a timeless reminder of a voice that was pure magic, a talent that burned brightly and left an indelible mark on the landscape of pop music. In the end, Andy Gibb's story is a powerful, cautionary tale about the dark side of fame and the immense pressures that come with a famous last name. He was a boy who just wanted to sing, a man who just wanted to be loved, a beautiful soul who was ultimately consumed by a relentless search for a place to belong. His life was a beautiful, fleeting melody, a song of joy and sorrow, and a final lingering whisper that asks us to remember not just the star, but the boy who just wanted to be his own man. And in the silent echo after the final note, all that remains is the memory of a voice that was, for a few glorious years, the sound of a generation's dreams.